Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. The military government in Niger says it has foiled an attempt by the deposed former president Mohamed Bazoum to escape custody. A military spokesman said the former president attempted to flee in the night with his family, cooks, and security. He adds that there were plans for the group to fly out on helicopters, but the plan was foiled. Mr. Bazoum has been under house arrest since members of his presidential guard staged a coup in late July. Niger is part of the African region known as the Sahel, a belt of semi-arid land that stretches from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea, just south of the Sahara Desert. The area is plagued by jihadists and beset by military regimes. The United States is urging Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces to stop shelling residential areas, saying this has deepened the suffering of the Sudanese people. The State Department said in a statement that the United States calls on the RSF to immediately cease shelling of civilian neighborhoods and to protect civilians in Nyala, Omdurman, and throughout Sudan. The RSF and the Sudanese military have been fighting since April in a conflict that has killed more than 5,000 people and displaced over 5 million from their homes. Recently, the force has intensified attacks on military-controlled areas in Omdurman using artillery and causing civilian deaths. The group has also continued besieging military bases in Nyala in the western Darfur region in a bid to capture the city. The U.S. reiterated its call for the RSF and the Sudan Armed Forces to immediately stop the fighting and resume talks to end the conflict. In July, U.S. and Saudi Arabia led peace talks between RSF and the army, but this eventually collapsed. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has facilitated 44 trucks with relief supplies to Kordofan and Darfur. Briefing journalist Farhan Haq, deputy spokesperson for the Secretary General, said that prior to this, the movement of supplies was delayed for 6 consecutive weeks due to insecurity. The convoy is said to be transporting supplies from the UN Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme, and UNICEF. Regarding the health situation in the country, the World Health Organization says that more than 1,400 suspected cases of cholera and 64 associated deaths have been reported in Sudan since a cholera outbreak was declared late last month.
The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs facilitated 44 trucks with relief supplies to Kordofan and Darfur. Prior to this, the movement of supplies was delayed for 6 consecutive weeks due to insecurity. The convoy is transporting supplies from the UN Relief Agency, Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme, and UNICEF. Regarding the health situation in the country, the World Health Organization says that more than 1,400 suspected cases of cholera and 64 associated deaths have been reported in Sudan since a cholera outbreak was declared late last month. Humanitarian agencies have scaled up their response to the outbreak, which comes as Sudan's healthcare system is stretched to its limits.
Now to our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. 77 Zambian nationals have been evacuated from Israel amid the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinian Hamas militants. The government says the evacuees who returned on Wednesday include 72 students. According to Zambia's Foreign Minister, Stanley Kakubo, 172 Zambians, including 143 students, live in Israel, but some of them had declined the government's evacuation offer and opted to stay behind. For those who have chosen to remain in Israel, the ministry says that it will maintain close collaboration with the Zambian embassy and the Israeli Foreign Ministry to take any necessary action that will ensure their continued safety. He adds that no Zambian has died in the war. And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to attend a peace summit in Cairo on Saturday to discuss how to bring an end to the Israeli-Gaza conflict. The South African presidency, in a statement, said that he was invited by Egypt's president to join the talks, which will cover the escalation of the conflict in Israel and the Gaza Strip, the urgent need for humanitarian support, and to make a call for the resumption of the peace process. The South African leader had earlier said he was ready to mediate in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian territories. He said his nation could draw on its experience of conflict resolution in Africa and beyond. In the meantime, South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, has embarked on a march to express their unwavering support for the Palestinian people. The party has been notably vocal in its support of Palestine in the ongoing conflict. Recently, Palestinian Hamas militants launched a surprise attack operation against Israel, killing scores of civilians. In response, Israel carried out airstrikes in Gaza, leading to the displacement of millions of people to the south. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Simosa, reports.
The African National Congress, ANC, is the latest political party in South Africa to march to the Israeli embassy in Pretoria in solidarity with Palestine. ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu, says the ANC has a long history of advocating for the rights of oppressed people around the world.
We are on record for many years having raised and campaigned for the liberation of Palestinian people for the longest of time. We must express our gratitude to various countries across the world that have stood up and are shining the spotlight on the oppression and the devastation that is taking place there in Palestine. But for us as the African National Congress, we have been at this for decades on this struggle.
Thousands of ANC supporters and leaders have gathered for this march, carrying banners and chanting slogans calling for an end to violence and a just resolution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. While the Palestinian community in South Africa says that the United Nations and its Security Council has failed the people of Palestine, they're adding that diplomacy has collapsed.
When it comes to the state, the illegal state of Israel, everybody has failed. The United Nations, the superpowers, the Europeans, the US, everybody has failed the people of Palestine. It is almost as if they don't exist, but we're going to ensure that the Palestinians speak through our voices.
There's a lot of innocent Palestinians, they kill them, the kids, the children and the women. Now we are solidarity here, we all South African, all the nation.
If you look at the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the Holocaust against the Palestinians for the past 7 decades, then we can only conclude that all of the powers up there have betrayed the Palestinians. It's that simple.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains a complex and long-standing issue with repercussions that extend far beyond the borders of the Middle East. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Simosa, Channels Television News.
And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Mr. Guterres said this during a press conference in Cairo with Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry. According to him, Gaza needs aid to scale and on a sustained basis. He also called on Hamas to release the hostages it seized on October 7 and on Israel to give unrestricted access to aid.
In the face of this humanitarian catastrophe, I'm calling for 2 immediate humanitarian actions: to Hamas, for the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages, to Israel, for immediate and restricted access of humanitarian aid to respond to the most basic needs of the people of Gaza. And as appalling as those attacks have been, they cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Both of my humanitarian appeals are essential in and of themselves. And to help realize these 2 appeals, I am calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. For nearly 2 weeks, the people of Gaza have gone without any shipments of fuel, food, water, medicine, and other essentials. Civilians in Gaza desperately need core services and supplies, and for that we need rapid, unimpeded humanitarian access. We need food, water, medicine, and fuel now. We need it at scale, and we need it to be sustained.
وده إشادة بالجهود التي تطلع بها الأمم المتحدة لمحاولة إيصال المساعدات الإنسانية لغزة. وأضم صوتي للسكرتير العام في أن استهداف المقرات الأممية والإنسانية والعاملين في حقل الإنساني يشكل انتهاكا صارخا للقانون الدولي الإنساني وينبغي أن يتوقف فورا.
Joining us now is Edward Uranian, VOA correspondent in Cairo, Egypt. Hello, Edward. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
Hello, Joka. Thank you for having me.
Right. So talk to us about the agenda set for Saturday's summit in Cairo on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Well, I think the most important item on the agenda is to get a ceasefire and a de-escalation of the conflict and a humanitarian truce, if that's possible. Perhaps it's not possible, but anyway. Also, of course, Egypt has been long concerned with the Palestinian a solution to the Palestinian conflict, and the two-state solution is the one favored by Egypt and the Arab countries. I don't know that that's going to go anywhere, but certainly that's high on the agenda. And of course, the UN Secretary General, who is going to be attending that conference, is talking about a truce and the release by Hamas of the Israeli hostages in return for a ceasefire. Now, I doubt that's going to happen either, knowing the position of Hamas. But anyway, those are top items on the agenda.
And we also understand, Edward, that President al-Sisi invited his South African counterpart and some others to this summit. What's the summit hoping to achieve?
Well, I think you need some international support because ultimately, if there is a solution, it will probably go through the UN, or it will need support of the UN, and you need some of the major parties at the UN, and South Africa clearly is one of the major parties, at least on the African continent. So a lot of important players are needed, and Mr. Ramaphosa is one of those.
And you did say, something about the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, calling for a ceasefire. He said that's not likely to happen. He's in Egypt as well to try and see what can be done to mediate in this crisis. So what more can you tell us about his trip? What has he been able to achieve?
Well, on the surface of it, precious little. He went to the Gaza border crossing and he gave a rather emotional speech, if you want to call it that, about the need for opening the crossing, and the fact that there were all those trucks with all these humanitarian supplies present along the border, and the people who need them are on the other side of the border and they're not able to access them. So he urged everyone to get this border crossing open. It would seem that the Egyptian bulldozers have been trying to repair the road surface, the damaged road surface on the Gaza side of the border, which would need to be done to get those trucks onto the Gaza side. But does that mean that's actually going to happen? I don't know.
Finally, is there an improvement in the situation at the Rafah border crossing with 8 trucks waiting to get into Gaza?
Well, really, not much has changed since we last talked. Not much has changed in a week, probably about a week. And I don't know, we could be in the same position tomorrow at this time. So has anything improved? I can't really say that anything has improved, to be honest with you.
Edward Uranian, thank you for the updates on the situation on that conflict.
My pleasure, Joka.
Away from the Israel-Hamas conflict, Liberia's main opposition candidate, Joseph Boakai, is courting smaller parties ahead of a likely runoff against incumbent judge, where provisional results from 99.5% of the 5,890 polling stations show that the two candidates remain neck and neck following elections on October 10. Mr. Ware currently has 43.8% of the vote, with Mr. Boakai on 43.5%. This suggests that neither candidate will get the more than 50% of the vote needed for victory. Voting is being repeated in parts of Sino, Nimba and Montserrado counties following allegations of ballot tampering, but not in enough areas to significantly affect the overall presidential tally. 9 temporary staff of the Election Commission have been arrested over alleged ballot tampering. The Commission has until 25th of October to release the final results. And still ahead on the program. Nigeria and China sign MOUs worth billions of dollars. Details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to Network Africa. Some sad news. The ambassador of Nigeria to Morocco, Alhaji Mansour Nuhu Bamali, has died at the age of 42. The ambassador, who is the younger brother to the Emir of Zauzau, Alhaji Nuhu Bamali, was appointed by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2022. A statement by the Media and Publicity Office of the Zauzau Emirate Council says the late ambassador died at a private hospital in Lagos while on his way to Morocco. The statement says that Ambassador Bamali, who was also the Magajin Garin Zauzau before his death, will be buried on today in accordance with Islamic law. He's survived by a wife and 2 children. Elsewhere, Senegalese Navy patrol has intercepted 2 boats carrying illegal migrants off the coast of Senegal. The 338 migrants, which included many young people as well as women and minors, were then forcibly returned to the Dakar naval base. The number of attempted migrant crossings to Europe has risen in recent months, with thousands arriving in places like Lampedusa in Italy and Spain's Canary Islands. The Canaries are a main target for migrants attempting to cross the Atlantic from West Africa. The Canaries saw 14,976 migrants arrive between January 1 and September 30, an increase of 19.8% compared to the same period in 2022. That's according to the latest figures from Spain's Interior Ministry. The head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia, Catriona Lang, says the conflicts in the country continues to take a heavy toll on civilians, even as last year saw the largest increase in civilian casualties since 2017. Briefing the Security Council on the situation in Somalia, she said early data indicate a similar trend in 2023, with 1,289 civilian casualties recorded so far, and this is partly attributable to Al-Shabaab attacks, but also the conflict in Laskanood. She told the council that Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud directed a military campaign against Al-Shabaab in the capital of Galmudug from 5th August until October 8.
Indeed, despite the
conflicts in Somalia continue to take a heavy toll on civilians. Last year, we saw the largest increase in civilian casualties since 2017. Sadly, early data indicate a similar trend in 2023, with 1,289 civilian casualties recorded so far. This is partly attributable to Al-Shabaab attacks, but also the conflict in Lassanood. The president was in Dusamareb, the capital of Galmudug state, from the 5th of August until the 8th of October to direct the military campaign against Al-Shabaab. Despite initial success, when the Somali National Army and the allied clan militias took significant territory, there have been setbacks and operational challenges. Government forces are now focused on regrouping, reinforcing and reorganizing, as well as mobilizing additional support from clans before resuming large-scale operations.
It remains vital that the drawdown of ATMIS troops be informed and guided by a careful assessment of the prevailing security situation and the Somalia security forces' capability. This must aim to avail the SSF with the necessary firepower to take over security responsibilities while also undertaking offensive against Al-Shabaab. In this context, this Council should, as a first step in November, consider lifting the current arms embargo on Somalia.
Despite the commendable success achieved in maintaining Phase 1 drawdown by the Somali security forces, it's imperative to recognize that forward operating bases earmarked for Phase 2 differed significantly. The unforeseen turn of events necessitated a thorough reorganization to ensure we maintain our momentum in countering the threat of Al-Shabaab. Before embarking on the next drawdown phase, comprehensive security planning for the population centers surrounding the forward operating bases slated for the collapse or handover is imperative.
Finally, Nigeria has signed a deal worth billions of dollars with some Chinese firms, including a deal for the construction of the Lekki Blue Seaport contract at the Lekki Free Trade Zone in Lagos. The agreements were reached on the sidelines of the Belt and Road Initiative Forum in Beijing, China, where Vice President Kashim Shettima is representing President Bola Tinubu. Our State House correspondent, Empress Simon, reports.
Since arriving in Beijing, China for the Third Belt and Road Initiative Forum, Vice President Kashim Shettima has been meeting with potential investors to attract more investments into Nigeria and also enhance the bilateral relations between the two countries in line with the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu. His engagements are paying off as the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI, brokered some deals. The agreements include a deal for the transfer of technology on lithium batteries, electric vehicles, and allied technologies.
We have 3 MOUs for projects valued at $2 billion, and 8 letters of intents for projects valued at $4 billion, making it a total of $6 billion in potential and new investments in Nigeria. This investment will translate into jobs, skills development and transfer, potential exports and foreign exchange earnings, and a boost to the local economy.
The Federal Ministry of Works also signed an agreement for the construction of the Lekki Blue Seaport contract at the Lekki Free Trade Zone in Lagos. Some Chinese firms also indicate their interest in partnering Nigeria to develop its technological space. The Vice President believes the coast is clear for more collaborations between Nigeria and the global community as the present administration provides level playing ground for investors.
We have secured funding for some of our major railway projects in the country, the Lagos-Ibadan-Kano route, and also the Kano-Kaduna railway line. And most importantly, we have succeeded in upgrading our relationship to a comprehensive partnership agreement, which will certainly open a vista of opportunities for mutually beneficial relationships between our two nations.
While in Beijing, Vice President Kashim Shettima will also meet with the Nigerians in diaspora. Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
That's Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.